Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Go With Your Gut podcast. My name is Lauren Dreyer, and today I want to start with a question. What do you do when something about you internally, not talking about being sick, but something does not feel right? What do you do? Do you push it down and pretend it's not there? Do you distract yourself somehow? Do you do something to numb whatever it is that you don't know? What do you do? I have had a few different instances. I don't know if it's just one point in time, but a few different times in my past, probably 5 years now, where I got to that point where something just didn't feel right. And I wasn't really sure what it was, but I knew I didn't feel how I was supposed to. The first one was probably about that 5 year mark ago, when I remember standing in my kitchen in the morning, eating breakfast, and I had just gotten done working out. So really I should be on top of the world, all those endorphins going, right? Well, I had just gotten done working out, and I was so mad, angry, like steam coming out of my ears kind of thing, because I didn't know why I felt so angry. It's not how I grew up. It's not who I am. And quite frankly, it was exhausting. And I was really sick of feeling like that. So I sat there and I was like, what can I do to change this? Because something in here does not feel right. And that is the first point in time where I decided to go up. It's the first time that I grabbed a journal, wrote everything out in my head. And it was that first turning point, because I knew something wasn't right. I knew something needed to change. And I had no idea what it was at that point, but something had to change. And that meant I needed to take some sort of action. But I was so sick of brushing it off and pretending it wasn't there that I said, okay, I don't know what I need to do, but I got to do something. So I made that change. Instead of going and, I don't know, grabbing a drink or taking a pill or doing something else to pretend it wasn't there, because it's exhausting and I couldn't do it anymore. And I was spending so much energy just being angry, and it ruined my entire day. And most likely a lot of the people around me. Thank goodness I worked from home back then, because if I would have been in the office, that would have been exhausting for everyone around me. Well, then I started to change and I started to realize what I could do to make myself feel better. So I started doing that, and I noticed a drastic change. A weight was lifted off of my shoulders and it felt amazing. So I kept on doing that, and it has been doing good for me ever since. The next time, lots of things happened in between there. The next time was when I was at home with my kids for a couple of years. At first I was so excited to be home with them, to be able to do all the things and, watch them grow up and have my little baby sitting on my lap and be able to do all the things during the day. And then I got to a point where they were old enough and I couldn't teach them what I wanted to teach them. And I was getting to a point where I wasn't being the person or the mom that I wanted to be, or for that matter, the wife that I wanted to be. So I said, okay, what needs to change? And I decided, and it was a really hard thing to decide, because I was almost gung-ho about proving that I didn't need to go back to work. I could do all the things. And finally, I said, okay, it is time for my kids to go to school, daycare, to be around other people. So I figured that out. And I was determined that I was going to do something that I enjoyed, something that I wanted to do. I wasn't going to go back and do something just to go to the office for 40 hours a week. That sounded miserable. So I was bound and determined to find something that I enjoyed, a company that supported what I wanted to do, my goals, and be okay with me being working, but also still having all of the things that I wanted to do by myself. And when I finally found that, it was absolutely insane how excited I was, because I was doing the things that I liked. I was doing things that I enjoyed at work, but I was also still able to do all those things on the side that I still love to do. And everybody at work was cheering me on. And that was a very odd feeling. But when I went back to work, I figured out I didn't want to admit it, but I knew something needed to change. I needed a change of scenery. I didn't need a pill. I didn't need something else to numb it, but something else needed to change. Then, about 6 months into being in that job, I was happy. I was doing the things that I liked, but something, again, just wasn't right. So I decided that I was still having such a struggle. And I talked to a coworker one day, and I had been toying with going to therapy for a really long, well, not really long time, but long enough. And she talked about it. And I asked her, I said, what do you think? Has it worked? How do you feel about it? And she sat there and told me that it was one of the best decisions that she'd ever made. And it was wonderful. And I was like, okay, that means I need to get over the fact that I don't want to be the person that has to go to therapy and say, yeah, I need somebody to talk me through some of my stuff, give me that different perspective that I like to give other people, and show me a way to work through some of my stuff, show me a different perspective, show me a different way of communicating. And I tell you what, I started, and it was incredible. I started to feel this weight once again lift off of me. Then, after all of that happened, I said, okay, I'm starting to feel drastically better. But then I started feeling this thing again, that something's not quite right. I was still, once again, overwhelmed. And I really hadn't started doing more things than I was, but something internally was not right. So, yes, circumstances had changed, stages of life had changed, all that, but something was still not right. Something needed to change. And I felt this kind of war kind of going on inside my head. And I went from when I started my job and still doing all of my other things, still lots of things on my plate, I started to feel extremely overwhelmed and conflicted and sort of out of control. I couldn't focus, couldn't do all these things. My nerves were just on edge all the time. So I asked therapist one day and I said, do you think that I might have ADHD? Because I've watched some people talk about their symptoms. I've looked it up and all of it looks really familiar and it looks like exactly what I'm feeling. And she said, you could. I know you have a pretty high amount of anxiety, but that would take you going to a psychiatrist, sitting there so they can see you, observe you, talk to you, and you can take the appropriate tests and get diagnosed. And she goes, as soon as you do that, we'll talk about how we need to work it into your life. So I said, okay, that's what I want to do. So I took the step and I did that. And at first, it was amazing to be able to put a label on it. That first time I went, and it wasn't for sure, but it was pretty clear that they were like, yeah, just from having an hour conversation with you and um, talking about your past, how you feel, how you work, it's pretty clear that you do have ADHD, but the anxiety covers it up. So he called it stealth anxiety or stealth ADHD. And he goes, you have a little war going on inside your head, don't you? And I said, I hadn't even had to tell you that. I've told people that for the past couple of years, and you just told me exactly what I've told them without me having to say it. And so I began to know something. I knew what was wrong, but I didn't know how to fix it because it would still be a while until I got that medication, which is fine. I still had a little bit of diagnosing to go through, a couple more appointments, and then I had to go talk to my primary physician about medication. And that took a decent amount of time. And I got frustrated because it was at the point where it was like a leak. Something is just slowly dripping, and you know something's there because you can see something dripping, but you don't know what it is. So then you investigate a little bit, and finally you find that leak. You mess with it a little bit, maybe to see what's going on, and all of a sudden it starts leaking all over the place. That's exactly how I felt. I didn't know, I thought I knew what it was, but I wasn't quite sure. I put a name to it. I labeled it, and all of a sudden I felt like I was on overdrive. I feel like I couldn't handle things, that I was out of control, and I didn't like it. I felt like I couldn't function, and it was really hard. I was doing all the things I normally do, but I was just always on edge because I knew what was going on. I could put a label on everything I was doing, but I couldn't very much control it, which is part of the anxiety, but that's another story. But the point is, all of these different times, I knew something wasn't right. And I decided that I'm not just going to find a way to push it down. I'm not going to find a way to numb it somehow. Did I numb it a little bit sometimes? Yeah, sure, because I needed to function. But I didn't just push it down. I investigated. I looked into it so that I could do something to help myself and figure out what was going on. So all of those things, my therapist didn't say anything about the ADHD. In fact, some questioned it because I'm not the one sitting there just fidgeting with everything the whole time. The anxiety covers it up. It's all how my brain works. And me not finishing tasks or losing my train of thought or anything like that. But it was all internal for me. It wasn't that fidgeting. So it was me knowing myself, knowing what I feel, and going with that gut instinct to, one, at the very beginning, knowing that something needed to change and getting that anger out and changing it. Two, knowing that, not being happy about it, but knowing that it's time for me to go back to work, separate myself from where I need to be, get back to it. Three, I knew I needed to go to therapy, and it wasn't bad, but I had some anger issues that I needed to work out, and somebody to help me manage the anxiety. It's not a bad thing. It's been a great thing. And then figuring out how to manage the ADHD. And folks, I'm on day 2 of meds right now, and I can't even tell you how drastically it's helping me. I am drastically calmer. My anxiety is cut in half, if not more. I am drastically more focused, and I don't second guess everything I do because that anxiety is drastically gone. I can actually do things. and I can actually finish things. I can not freak out about everything I do or thing I send or thing I post. I cannot freak out about all of it. So I ask you again, what do you do when you know something is not right with you? Do you numb it? Do you push it down? Do you distract yourself with something and tell yourself nothing is wrong and that you'll just figure it out? Or if you listen to the episode with Charlie Matthews, do you figure out what your baseline is? Figure out what normal is for you so that when something is not right, you know. When something needs to change, when you're thrown out of whack, you can figure it out rather than just thinking, oh, this is the new normal. Maybe it has something to do with a new normal, but do you have that inner sense of something's not right? I need to figure it out, because nobody will figure it out for you. You have to know that about yourself. And every one of these, it hasn't been anybody else that has decided to do it. Every single time it has been me saying something's not right with me. What's the action I need to take? It doesn't matter if anybody else thinks I'm freaking nuts, because they probably do, and that's fine. But writing in that journal and figuring that out changed me. Going back to work fixed a lot of things, and it got me in a new surroundings. It got me in a much happier place. Going to therapy was insane. It got me to start stepping out of my own way. It started helping me with that communication and working through that anxiety, all of that. 4, I was the one that referred myself to a psychiatrist and asked my therapist about it because I knew something was not right. But I was determined to figure it out for myself instead of just pushing it aside and saying, oh, I'm just an angry person now. Oh, this is just normal for me. I'm just high strung and crazy, and who knows what else. But I wasn't willing to accept that answer. And it's a great thing that I wasn't, because I figured out what was wrong with me. And now I can function again. I can do the things that I love to do. I can actually be productive during the day at work. I can do all of those things. I can take care of myself. I can take care of my family and not do all the things. I need to keep some of the things off my plate, but I'm not just constantly on edge, and my nerves are not about shot. So how do you handle when you know that something is not right? What do you do? I encourage you to figure that out and take action based on what you know about yourself. And I beg you, please go with that gut instinct, because mine has never led me wrong. Mine has always led me to a place where I'm doing better. So I encourage you, as always, to go with your gut, and then please keep going.